civilians in a northwest region where the army clashes frequently with anti-regime military defectors. That's according to the British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. The UN Human Rights Chief, Navi Pillay, has recommended to the Security Council that Syria should be referred to the International Criminal Court. She said she believed more than 5,000 people had now been killed by the Syrian authorities.
It is rather shocking that when I reported to the Security Council on the 18th of August, I reported 2,000 civilians killed, and today I've reported that the figure exceeds 5,000. And the number of children killed, more than 300. I reported situations of torture in the detention centers, just huge numbers, displaced persons, and thousands in detention.
Syria's ambassador to the UN, Bassam Imadi, rejected those findings by Mrs. Pillay. He said they were biased propaganda.
They are doing all kind of misbehavior, and they are spreading all kind of disinformation, and they are misleading everybody through the media and through their heavyweights in the Security Council, just in order to distort the image of Syria, to mislead the public opinion, to present allegations, incredible allegations, and harm the reputation and the credit of the Syrian government. Why I'm saying this? Because Mrs. Pillay, the High Commissioner, is not objective, is not fair, she is not genuine in all her approach in the report she presented. She has trespassed her mandate. She allowed herself to be misused in misleading the public opinion. These people are infected with the disease called Syrianophobia.
Bassam Imadi, who is the Syrian ambassador to the UN. Well, we can speak to a former Syrian diplomat who only last week left Syria, is now in Istanbul. We're not going to give his name to protect him and those around him, but thanks for being with us on the BBC World Service. A distortion, says Bassam Imadi, about these reports of killings in Syria. What do you think?
Yes, it is. In fact, it is a distortion of the truth, but it's not coming from Ms. Pillay. Actually, it's coming from Mr. Jafari, a former colleague of mine. And I feel very sorry for him to have to be in this situation. Actually, what Ms. Pillay has said is only a tip of the iceberg of what's going on in Syria. You have only to talk to people coming out of Syria to know the truth. It's unfortunate that the truth is worse than what we have heard from Ms. Pillay. 5,000 is a very conservative number. It's much higher than that. There are people who are missing now, and most of those who are missing have definitely been killed. It's unfortunate, but it is rather it's not a distortion on the part of Ms. Pillay. Yes.
And what's the attitude in the government when a decision is made to send the army in to a place like Homs? Do they understand that they're going to kill people? And when the people go on protesting, what's the response inside government now?
Are you talking about the government or the regime? I mean, those people who are in power now are not the government. They are perhaps the president and the people around him, the security forces and the leaders of the divisions of the army. Now, the problem is that every day people are expecting the army to come into Homs. I think the strategy there is to have the army around Homs for some time so that the world would get this situation as a normal situation. So when the army goes in, people would not be surprised. It is a kind of preparation for an invasion of the city. And we expect to have many people killed, but perhaps not in one day. They are doing it in installments, day after day. They are killing a small number of people so that the world opinion would not be enraged in the way that it was enraged in other parts of the world.
So you served as a diplomat in Moscow. You know the attitude of the Russians. At the moment, the Russians are absolutely opposed to any outside intervention. Why is that?
There are many reasons for that. You have the pressure from Iran, you have their interests in not letting the Europeans have more influence in Syria, and perhaps one of the countries that they would not like to see in Syria is Turkey because of its influence in the countries that were part of the Soviet Union before. There are many reasons for that, but it's unfortunate to see that the Russians are taking this stand against the people of Syria. I myself met the Russian ambassador in Syria, Mr. Azmatullah, and I talked to him. I said, look, you are isolated now after the General Assembly resolution. He said, we abstained. I said, this is not enough. You have to take a stand. The people in Syria are being killed. And it happened that I was in Russia in the days of the revolution, 1991, and I saw how excited you were to get rid of the dictatorship of the Soviet Union. Why are you taking this stand? He said, we are standing with the people of Syria, which is untrue. If they were standing along with the Syrian people, they should have forced the regime to make, let's say, a compromise with the opposition. What they wanted was to start a dialogue. A dialogue can only start after the stopping of the killing that is going on in Syria. You cannot have a dialogue while you have a pistol next to your head. How can you do that? I said your stand should be to, at least at the beginning, to stop the killing of the people in Syria. And then you talk about dialogue. But it's unfortunate. The Russian decision to stand against the Syrian people is very bad decision.
And just very briefly, what's the attitude in the army? Because they do seem to be taking orders still.
There is a problem in the army. The army is not acting alone. There is security forces. There are thugs standing behind the divisions of the army or the soldiers, and they give orders: shoot to kill. If a soldier does not carry out the order, he would be killed himself, and that's why you see so many defections in the army now. They refuse to shoot their fellow citizens, and they defect. But the main problem, let me tell you this. The main problem is that the army, the soldiers who want to defect, the officers who want to defect, they have nowhere to go. Had there been a buffer zone, we would have seen so many defections that you cannot imagine. So many soldiers and officers from the army come to the revolutionaries and ask them, please, we want to defect, give us protection. The problem is that the revolutionaries don't have shelter for those soldiers and officers, and they ask them to go back and stay in the army until the time comes that they can do something against the regime. So it's a very complicated problem. I don't think the time allows us to talk more about it.
Well, I'm afraid not. You're absolutely right. There is so much more to talk about. But thank you very much indeed for opening up a window, really, into what's going on at the higher levels. And that's most helpful. Thanks. That's a Syrian diplomat who's just left within the last week and is now taking refuge in Turkey. We're not going to give his name because of the security threat that might represent.